Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. I am your host, Stephen Stark. That's John Webster. That's Jared Kozal. If you've been around the channel, you know who we all are by now. Me and John are here all the time, and Jared is here frequently when Star Wars comes up. And that ought to tell you what we're talking about today. What are we talking about today?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got my lack of beard. Find your lack of beard disturbing shirt on today. What do you got, John?
Return of the Jedi.
Okay, Return of the Jedi. I got you. Very nice. Jared, just in basic black, looking snazzy.
Yeah, I do have my Star Wars T-shirts, but I figured I would just rock the simple look today. I got my merch. I got my merch behind me.
Right. Hey, man, nobody's doubting you. I promise, nobody's doubting you.
The basic black. He's going Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi.
So yeah, we're here to talk about the first 4 episodes of Visions. I was not in a hurry to watch this show, so I honestly only watched the first 2 episodes yesterday and then the second 2 today. I'm really glad you talked me into this, John. They're quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I'm going to start with, as we usually do, is the top-down view. And John, I said this to you this morning when we were chatting. Like, I had this disconnect at the very beginning where I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Who is she? What is this? And then I'm like, all right. Visions doesn't have to connect to anything else. It can just pull what it wants from Star Wars, twist it around, and do with it what they want. And once I remembered that that's what this was, I was like, okay, let me figure out what's going on here. And I actually did thoroughly enjoy it, especially the first 2 episodes, I will say. And we'll get into more specifics. But yeah, let's throw it over to our guest if we can. Jared, what'd you think of season 2 of Visions, just in general terms?
I really, really liked it. I have seen them all. We're just going to be discussing the first 4 today, but I will, like you, Stephen, I will say that the first 2 in particular are some of my favorite shorts that Visions has done over the course of this entire 2-season project.
Mm-hmm.
I find this to be such a cool experiment that Star Wars is undertaking. As someone who is particularly devoted to the Skywalker saga and the canon and the mythos and how everything connects, Visions existing outside of that could be a stumbling block for me, but it's not, because it's just so cool to get to see all these diverse and enthusiastic filmmakers kind of take their shot at a story in the Star Wars universe that doesn't have any pressure on it to become anything more than just a cool 15 minutes. And within that framework, some of them have managed to do something I feel quite extraordinary, and sometimes it's just fun. I really enjoyed all of these, and I'm looking forward to delving into the themes, because I do feel that some of the themes that are reflected here are, classic Star Wars themes, but they also get to kind of come at it from a new perspective that we don't always get to see, which is an awesome opportunity.
Yeah. John, got anything you want to add to that idea?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this because I was a huge fan of season 1, with the caveat, and this is what was actually nice about this season, is that last season there was for me the whole kerfuffle with the subtitles, and because Disney still hasn't actually fixed that, and this year there's only 1 episode that was not made in English, so it's less of an issue. And these first 4 episodes are just, I got to watch them as they were intended. So, but anyway, aside from all that, I was a huge fan last season, and I feel like I enjoyed this season even more, just because I don't know, it's the diversity of the animation styles, but also the diversity of the storytelling, and yeah, it was just cool. I will say right off the top that my favorite was the second episode, Screecher's Reach, but I loved all of these. I thought they were great. I I actually can't wait till we talk about the fourth one, I Am Your Mother, which I adored.
It was very funny to me.
Yeah, and it's just, a break from all the heavy drama, so. But yeah, no, I loved it, and I think this is some of the most creative content that Lucasfilm has been putting out for Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It is very, again, like I'm watching this. We'll just jump into the first episode because it really does connect to like my experience in a very significant way. I believe it is called, I'm gonna look it up. It's called Sith. That's all it's called. Mm-hmm. And Lola is the name of the real like character in this episode. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, I know this is animation and I know it's going to be different and outside the style that I'm used to, but the decision to have basically a colorless background early on was really jarring to me, and I didn't understand why would you make that choice. Of course, by the time you get to the end of the episode, I had gotten over my cognitive dissonance of like, this is Star Wars inspired, not Star Wars exactly. And the theme of her coming to balance the light and the dark in herself, and the way she was an artist, so having that that almost blank background that became more and more filled in as the story progressed was a really nice visual bit of storytelling.
Yeah, I just got so excited when this started off. Just because it's funny because you and I definitely came from like different places going into this and stuff, because I know, like you said, you weren't fully prepared for what this was going to be, and meanwhile I stepped into this like, what wild and crazy vision, no pun intended, for Star Wars is this going to be. And also, I love that, it starts off with a CG animated short, because it's very much in contrast to season 1, which, was all Japanese anime, which is, traditionally hand drawn. But yeah, I just loved it. And I loved like the story of this woman who has, who kind of over the course of the short comes to, terms with her, both sides of her, the light and the dark, and embracing that, which, of course, is almost a very, human story, and not necessarily, I guess, depending on your perspective, you could argue that it's not something we see a lot in Star Wars, because it's usually like the light versus the dark. But I think it's something very intrinsic to our human experience, which is embracing, that there are aspects of us, that lean more in the dark, and that's, it's part of what makes us whole. So I thought that it was just a great story, and just the character designs, and like, man, when she, takes out her lightsaber,
yellow katana lightsaber, I was like, yeah. I'm here
it's
for
like
it.
that. That's not something that, we could get something like that in regular Star Wars, but it feels very like they're allowed to get very unique with their designs in Visions. So yeah, I love that. I always love katana inspired stuff, because That's, I've loved those swords, since I was little. Big, Highlander fan here. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're cool. Everybody likes katanas.
And the Sith is just an awesome, like the Sith Master is just an awesome design. Looks like something out of I'm not well versed in like the old Republic stuff from Legends, but that seems very evocative of.
But it feels like it could be just part of that continuation of the Sith.
Yeah, no, I mean, these, as we mentioned, are non-canonical. They don't take place on the definitive point in the timeline, but this feels like it's set kind of in the old Republic era when Sith and Jedi were prevalent. That Sith Master you mentioned, John, I found him very inspired and designed by Darth Malak from the famous Knights of the Old Republic video game trilogy.
Coattail for the win, by the way. If you haven't played Knights of the Old Republic, it's old game. The graphics don't really hold up, but the
story is unparalleled. It's awesome. But yeah, this was not one of my favorite shorts of all 2 seasons of Visions so far, and part of it is because I think it is just the most beautifully animated of any of them. I watched this one 3 times before I moved on to the second one, just because I was like, this is such a visual treat. From the opening scene with that awesome new droid design, E2, and then the kind of the way the color literally like kind of bleeds into the frame. It's just such vibrant visual storytelling, and the way it's contrasted with the darkness and how that kind of bleeds out of Lola as she's struggling with her inner darkness, but her emotions kind of feel like they're painting the scene for us, from the kind of peaceful, opening sequence to the moment when things become more fearful and violent, and the screen becomes kind of blood red, and you kind of are transported with her through her fear as her old master tracks her down. And then the way that the screen kind of lights up in this golden red contrast as she ignites her golden blade against her master's red kind of claymore inspired lightsaber. And then the way the darkness kind of comes back into it, but this time it's under her control because she's accepting the darkness as part of her, not in a way that I feel some people want the Jedi to reckon with the darkness of being like a gray Jedi, because I don't think that's what this is. I feel like she's accepting the darkness as part of her because she was a former Sith apprentice, but she doesn't act like a Sith in this episode. She acknowledges that she has darkness, that we all do. It's an intrinsic part of her that she cannot escape and that she needs to reckon with it. But then what does she do? How does she defeat her master? She ignites her blade and she acts in self-defense as a Jedi would. And she may not call herself a Jedi, but she is very clear what she is not, which she is not a Sith anymore.
Right. And she does reach to some of that aggression. Yeah. Which is, it's a very Sith thing. Again, I have a lot of problem with the Jedi. Don't get me wrong. I love those guys. They're awesome. But there's problems with the Jedi Order, especially as it exists in the late Republic era. But that sort of synthesis of the 2 wolves that live inside you, it's a thing that every culture recognizes. It's a thing we all grapple with as people. It's a thing that Star Wars has always grappled with. Sometimes not very subtly, but sometimes like sublimely. Ahsoka has that arc. Anakin has that arc, but fails. Who else? There was another character I was literally just thinking of that has a similar arc to that. It's gone now. Mace Windu. Again, you have to get into some of the more extended canon there. But Mace Windu's lightsaber is purple because it's half blue, half red. Because he is someone who had to contend with his aggression. And when he learned to synthesize that and really just focus it focus his aggression only on the limited amount of violence he needed to do to achieve his goals. So ultimately, he's another one of those characters that has followed that journey. But it was really fantastic to see the way they represented that journey visually in this episode. As you say, John, no color. The color eventually bleeds in. She learns to balance darkness and light. And the way it ends with like the shot of 3 planets in space. But so it's the colors surrounded by darkness, and then the darkness fades to white, and then I loved the color symbolism in this. And again, it was weird to me because of the lack of color early on.
Yeah, I do want to say, in terms of like the visual splendor of the episode, I loved what I'm calling the IMAX portion of the episode when she steps into the room with, you know, all the painting, and it's like painting, you know, floral life, and you know, and all this stuff. Just the screen expands and gets bigger, and it's just taking you in, and I will say, I swear, this always sounds like I'm just bragging about having a 4K TV, but I will say, like, the Dolby Vision colors of this episode were stunning, because it just felt like it was radiating off of the screen, especially when she goes outside and you see like the sun in the distance. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And this is part of like why I love the animation medium so much, is because I do feel like we're in a day and age where, you know, live action, like the goal is always to make things look sort of darker and moodier, but animation gets to, you know, have these beautiful vibrant colors, and I remember watching this being like, this is the type of thing that's like, you couldn't imagine doing something like this in live action. This is this is a film that, you know, that needs this particular, you know, visual language, and the colors are so important, so that, you know, the black and also the white registers so much, because you also then have these explosions of color, and it's absolutely breathtaking.
They kind of nailed it, like with the visual storytelling in this one. I don't think they're doing anything all that unique or groundbreaking in the story that they're telling, which is fine. You know, you don't have to create the Mona Lisa every time you sit down to paint a picture. But they really did do something, I think, kind of special with this one. Because, John, you're saying Screecher's Reach was your favorite. I think this one was my favorite.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either choice.
Right. The sort of like language of visual storytelling that they're using in this one just really hit me. And I will say that episode 2 and episode 4 have a thing in common that did hurt my enjoyment of those episodes a little bit, and that's the frame rate of the animation. You know what I mean? It's a little bit, it's not at 24 frames a second, you know? And I don't even know if it's animated on 2. Some of it feels like it might be 3 frames per it's a very choppy, which is a choice, you know? For me, I don't love it, but it is what it is.
I think the one that I had an issue with that for was episode 3. But I rewatched it today, and the more I've watched
it, 3, not 4. You're right. 3 was the one, not 4.
Yeah. And so I've now sort of adjusted to that, but it did take me a little bit aback on my first viewing or two. But we'll get to that when we discuss
Yeah,
the
yeah,
episode.
yeah.
But
Would you want to move on to episode 2, or is there something else about episode 1 you wanted to say?
just like this, it showed that I'm always going to probably potentially be more like heartbroken over droids getting hurt than humans because when her droid gets,
What about when she
like,
destroyed the Sith Master's 2 droids?
yeah, that was really badass. And but then when the droid gets hurt, I'm like, oh no, because it is
No, John. The 2 that she destroyed, those are also droids.
Oh, well, okay, good droids then.
Yeah.
Oh, so now we have qualifiers. I see.
I feel like the fact that the droid is kind of coded more as a dog, whereas the others are coded more as like sentries, probably engender sympathies a little bit more towards
each. Yeah, nobody cries for battle droids. I know.
Yeah, no, I did think that the 2 Sith droids were awesome. They had the kind of like red, kind of Sith Eternal inspired look. That I really found interesting, but that action sequence where she's escaping on the bike after her Sith Master tracks her down, and the droids like blast off after her, and the music starts picking up. Like, I thought that was just an amazing filmmaking.
I'm glad you said something because it reminded me of her motorcycle.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was just about to say
that. The General Grievous motorcycle.
But it's like it's one of the better like realizations of that vehicle design that I've ever seen, because you can actually see out the front of it the way it's designed. Most of them you can't. There's just a giant wall in front of you. I also thought that the animation of it, the way she would lean in it.
Oh, leaning out and
then when she actually laid it over sideways and it did that sort of like, how a lid will spin around and wobble. It was so cool. It was so
cool. What it elicited in me is and it's one of those things that you don't think about that you've been missing since you grew up, but like when she leans out the side and starts firing away, and like the whole thing felt like a really kick-ass awesome toy design that I wish I could buy. And I don't know, maybe they'll they could make that.
I've always thought the motorcycle was kind of a dumb idea in general, but I really loved the execution of this vision of it. So yeah, good job. You made me genuinely really like a thing that I genuinely really don't most of the time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think anything else before we move on.
I'm not gonna lie. I love this. His design was very cool, where he could roll or walk. Thought it was very neat.
Yeah. And I feel like if I'm going to shout out on Disney Plus, if you go under the extras tab, they have a little like kind of making of featurette for each one of these shorts.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's what I'm doing after this.
And they talk about, the creative process behind it and how like they wanted to make a droid that was walking on 3 legs, because that was the original vision. But then the animators kind of figure out how to make him, collapse into a little ball that could also roll. And then, he has the cannon that will come out of his eye and has that awesome moment where he blows the droid's head away. But it's just such creative, it's such a creative style. And I really want to highlight, for each of these shorts, the studio that brought them to life. This one was Eyrie Studios from Spain. And they are apparently a very young animation studio. Like, they have a lot of talent behind them. Rodrigo Blas is the director and writer of this particular short, who has a ton of experience. But this is one of like their first major projects, and like what an entrance! Like what a statement to put yourselves on the map. Because I just think this is such a inspired and dynamic piece of visual storytelling that takes what is a very simple story and makes it feel vital and fresh just from the sheer passion that you can see in the animation of it. And I feel like this is going to be one that I one of the things I love about Visions is that there are these little like bite-sized chunks of Star Wars that you can visit if you don't have time, say, to watch a whole movie or even like a few episodes of a show. You can just like, this is like 15 minutes in and out, and you
And
don't
they're all disconnected from one another.
Yeah.
It's not like an episodic series.
Yeah,
They're all vignettes,
like,
basically.
yeah, and you like this part of a volume, but you don't need to watch the other episodes to get this one. And I feel like this will be one that if I just need a little like, little kick of 15 minutes of visual excellence, this is one I can always go back to.
Yeah, and it's really Visions is really not that I didn't completely appreciate it before, but it's really taught me to appreciate the short film form, because they're able to pack so much in 15 to 20 minutes depending on the film, and just but also in a way that makes me long for more. I still really want them to take a couple of these short films and expand on them a bit, and a different format. They actually, with season 1, they did a novel called it was called Ronin, which was based on the first short. And I'm still waiting for like either a miniseries or a film of the Ninth Jedi from last season.
That would be amazing. One of the things I'm noticing, so season 1 of Visions, I think all, or at least most of the animation studios were Japanese.
Yes, they were all. Yeah.
Whereas, as you say, this first one, Eyrie, is Spanish. Episode 2 is by Cartoon Saloon in Ireland. Aardman, the Wallace and Gromit people, did episode 4. I'm not sure where
episode 3 is Chilean. Punk Robot is a Chilean studio based in Santiago.
Chilean, okay.
Yeah.
I was hearing Choyan, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but you said Santiago, and I was like, aha. Knowing a little bit of geography helped. Which I find, by the way, to be very exciting, just to get all these different visions. I didn't do that on purpose.
I was going to say it's really great because, for 2 reasons. One, as much as I loved last year or last season, and it was great to get like 9 shorts, with different styles of Japanese animation, but because they all came from the same place, there were a lot of very common themes in the films. You got a lot of lightsaber stuff, as you would expect. Japanese culture is rooted in sort of martial arts and swords and that type of stuff. So it so that made sense. But what was great about this season is that because each one was from a different country, there was like this explosion of different ideas and different focuses, which I just I thought was great. So
right on. Let's move on to episode 2, shall we? We've already 30 minutes into the stream. Let's move on to episode 2. John, take it away. You love it.
Yeah, this was my personal favorite, maybe because it's so damn creepy and and unsettling by the end of the episode. But what I thought about, I had a thought like halfway through the short. I was like, wait a second, that's right, this is Star Wars, but we haven't really seen anything too Star Warsy yet. And then as I was saying to you, Stev, that red lightsaber comes out. And you're like, ooh, I see what's going on here. But no, I loved it. I loved like the score is very minimal, and it's really only like one theme. I think I looked at the soundtrack that they released for this episode, and it's like 2 tracks, and it's like 4 or 5 minutes. But it's so effective. And I'm thinking about like there's a moment in the short when they're heading off to the cave, and it's sort of optimistic, and then it's like a brutal smash cut to the front of the cave, and you just got the spooky music, and it's like, this is not going to be an adventure for you guys. And I will say, like, the Sith ghost, so absolutely terrifying. Just like
the screech.
Oh god, so scary. And then like pitiful as they're revealed in as the sunlight comes through, and it's just so and then by the end of the episode we're left to be like, is that a fate that awaits Doll, unless she figures out a way to maybe get out of this at some point. But
heartbreaking end of the episode.
Heartbreaking. And like, I'm always a sucker for the sad stuff, so maybe that's why it's my favorite. But I do hope that there might yet be hope for Doll. That's the great thing about so many of these shorts, and it was very prevalent in season 1, which was that they were left open-ended and we didn't see a definitive conclusion to the story. And so I feel, and we do see Doll kind of turned back with this look of, could it, it looks like worry, possible regret, possible trepidation. So I feel like, her story is not set at the end of the episode. But and kind of just shout out that holy shit, Meryl Streep plays the Sith mother.
No,
it's Angelica Houston.
Angelica Houston. Sorry. Sorry.
Ooh, don't get it twisted, my man. That's Morticia.
Sorry, I got my I got my actresses mixed up. But I remembered it was a very big name. Sorry.
We were both ready with that one, Jared.
No. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Meryl Streep in Star Wars. By all means, give her a project. But yeah, let's give Angelica Houston her due, because she was awesome in this.
Well, that's even better because, as you say, Stev, Morticia.
Right. And like, what a great voice. I mean, she's only got 3 lines in the whole thing, and one of them is no. But
oh god, that's so scary, because it's like, you're like, no, Doll, don't, like, can't you see this? this woman is no good.
Yes,
this is very suspicious. She's
strong bad.
Yeah. And I love, like, and her, her found family is just like, this is a bad idea. But
well, and the thing is, you just, all the way up until the end, it's a hero's journey.
Yeah.
And it plays out like any other hero's journey, along with her friend saying, if you get the chance, don't look back. But then you get to the end and they have no context for who this woman is. But yeah, okay, well, you killed someone with a lightsaber, a red lightsaber, their red lightsaber. And then this other person shows up and said, oh, you did what you had to do. You didn't want to be violent. You just had to, which is like the first step down that path. And if you're going with the rule of 2, well, was the Sith mother the master or the apprentice? It's tough to say, but one or the other, I would imagine. And so when somebody kills one or the other, they take over the apprentice spot, right? So I don't know if the Sith Mother was the master already or not. Don't think it's important. And John, you also said you hope that Dahl can turn things around or whatever. We'll never know. Literally never know.
Yeah, and
the story ends with her looking over her shoulder and the door closing. And that's all we're ever likely to get of this story.
Yeah, so chilling.
But it's kind of beautiful because, as Guilty Undertaker has pointed out a couple of times, episode 2 feels like it could be a prequel to episode 1 in a, not an art style, but like thematically. Someone learning, becoming a Sith apprentice versus somebody who has left the Sith behind.
No, this definitely feels like it could take place in the mini, like the millennia between when the Sith are supposedly extinct and when they finally emerge with Darth Sidious at the beginning of the prequel era, when the Sith are in hiding, but they are still out there. They are recruiting. The rule of 2 is in effect. And this story feels very much like a tragedy and a cautionary tale. It is the quintessential be careful what you wish for kind of story. Because it really takes what I found so effective about it. I do think that while Sith may be my favorite visually of all these shorts, this one has my favorite story of any of them, and which is why it's probably ultimately my favorite as well, is because it takes so many beats that are considered familiar and good in the Star Wars universe, and then it just manipulates them and twists them and shades them until all of a sudden you're just, the bottom drops out of your stomach. Like you start with Dahl kind of in the Luke Skywalker position. She wants a better life for herself. Totally understandable. She has friends, she's loved, but that conversation she has with Bathan at the fireplace where he's like, there are worse lives, Dahl, and she says there are better lives. And that's not a wrong thing for her to be feeling. She wants to kind of see what's beyond the horizon for her. And you don't feel like that's a misplaced impulse. That medallion that she's carrying, you're like, maybe that's from her mother, maybe that's from someone that she is trying to like live up to their legacy or something along those lines. But then when you get that smash cut that John alluded to this dark, terrifying, cave, from there it just the knife twists just keep coming. And I was especially taken with Dahl's, insistence of the classic idea of it's all in your mind, and the idea of, when Yoda talks about the dark side cave to Luke, is like, what's in there? Only what you take with you. And that's what you think it's going to be. The twist is that the ghost, as is alluded to, turns out to be very real. But as the Sith Mother alludes to, the test is still in the mind. It's just the inner darkness that Dahl ultimately needs to confront what is she willing to do to get that better life? And the answer turns out to be she will kill. And it may be in self-defense, but she kills.
She was not killing in self-defense.
And she kills the Sith woman when she's trapped under a rock, and she could have escaped, but she chose to take her life. And then she makes her way out into back to her family, and that's when the Sith Mother approaches her as kind of this poison chalice. They talk about in the behind the scenes filmmaker focus about her being kind of a rose with poison thorns, where she's offering this better life, but you can see the thorns underneath, and those little moments where you just get the sense this is wrong. Like the moment when Dahl speaks to the medallion and it starts to glow red, and you're like, oh no. Yep. And then when
this Star Wars, anything red's bad, we know it.
Yeah. And then when she's like, can my friends come? And the Sith Mother's eyes glow red, and she's like, no, this test was only for you. And then she turns around and is trying to be like, I understand. You told me that this was the way to get a better life. Don't you think I should do this? And Bathan kind of nods to her, but you can just see the tears streaming down Keena's face, and her, like, they don't want her to go. They sense that this is wrong. She senses this is wrong, but at this point she has, it's kind of like what Anakin did. Once he made that choice to go to the dark side, he had to kind of keep justifying it to himself and justifying it to himself and justifying it to himself. And Dal, it's even more tragic for her because I don't think she truly understands what the Sith are. She just wanted an escape. But you get the sense as she takes the Sith Mother's hand and walks up to the ship and goes off to, as the doors close behind her, she looks back and I got the very definitive sense that she has made a terrible and irrevocable mistake. And John, you mentioned that I still have hope that she might come back. I think that she doesn't. I think that this is kind of the tragedy is that this happened to so many people and children when the Sith were in hiding. They trapped them. They forced them into this cycle of darkness. And Dal is not going off to have the better life in the stars that she.
No, she's going off to learn.
She's going off to learn how to murder and kill, and
to be a child soldier.
Yeah, and at the best, kind of like what the Sith Master in the first short alludes to, her only hope of escape is going to be to kill the Sith Mother and take her place. And if not, then she might end up like the Sith Banshee woman that they found, and she will be, father to be replaced for the strongest, because only the strong survive in the Sith code. And it is such a tragic ending for a little girl who just wanted a better life, but she didn't realize that the flower that she was being offered, the chalice, was poisoned until it was too late.
Yeah, I also want to say, you mentioned kind of the Luke parallels, but a lot of this reminded me of Anakin being offered, the life of a Jedi by Qui-Gon, and this is, a terrible, inverse of that, and just the way that Qui-Gon said, when Anakin says, "What about my mother? Is she free too?" And Qui-Gon, is very delicately "I tried to free your mother, Annie, but with the Sith Mother, it's just no, it's cold and it's unfeeling, and yeah, it's
ultimately the end product is the same, which is one of the problems the Jedi have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was I was also going to say, not that it turned out well for Anakin, but
turns out attachment pretty important to most people.
Yeah, and oh god, it's just and what you were saying, Jared, the fact that she doesn't even know, she's not even able to make the choice that a viewer of Star Wars would be able to make, because she doesn't understand the context of of who the Sith are in relation to the Jedi, or even what this power is that she's tapped into. But and you talked about, she's already taken her first step down the dark path, and that's where you enter justification. And it's and that's so true of, not just in Star Wars, but in the real world. It's you make a terrible, fateful decision, and then every decision you make after that, instead of stepping back and saying, I made a mistake, you instead make worse decisions, because you need to justify it to yourself and be well, I did this, so I have to do this. And
in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
That's, or in for a dime, in for a dollar, depending on your regional preference, whatever.
And we see that time and time again, even in the canon story. Anakin is an example of that. Dooku is a big example of that, especially in his that third, or I guess fourth, whichever number it is, short of Tales of the Jedi, when he's offered to sort of come back from that, and he can't. And it's the same thing at work here. She has that it wasn't self-defense that she did. She made a decision in that moment to, to kill this person who was trying to, someone trying to harm them, but in a position where, she has the weapon, the Sith is, is, on the ground in a position that, she could just run off at that point, but she makes a decision to swing that lightsaber and kill her. So then the decision to go off because she can't stay, because then, well, she could, but she, chooses not to because then she has to live with what she's done. But if instead this was a necessary step on the road to, this, destiny, let's call it, and, she's going to go off and it's going to make it all worth it. That's what they all say. And yeah.
Yep. Just do a little crime. But then you do another crime to cover up that crime. And then you're lying about what you did. And yeah, it's all spirals out of control. The thing is, it doesn't feel like it's really spiraling out of control, even when it obviously, in hindsight, it has been since the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I love how subtly it's all laid in. Because, I don't really know that there's something bad going on until she makes the decision to swing the lightsaber. Yeah. And even then, I'm like, well, because I'm a person that believes, okay, here is a woman trapped under a rock, probably going to die. Do I leave her there to starve to death? Do I try to do something to incapacitate her and get her some medical attention? Your intent when you perform an action is also important. It's not the only thing that matters. The outcome of your action is also important. If I shoot a person, even if I didn't mean to, well, I still shot a person. But the idea that all of this was a test, because she's been being influenced by the Sith Mother since before the episode started. She had the pendant thing, and just this idea of you've got some force abilities and I can detect it. I'm going to create a situation in which you kill someone.
Yeah. And the thing that, one of the other things that's so tragic about it is you see the way that Dal thinks that she's following the hopeful path when she holds that amulet up to her mouth, and she's like, I follow your path with strength and courage. And that's what made me think, oh, maybe she got this from her mother or her father or something along those lines. But the tragic irony was that you realize every single decision that she makes from the moment that she decides to go to the cave is made out of fear. She is afraid of going, being stuck on this, world, which certainly doesn't look like a good life, but she clearly has people who loves and care about her. She is afraid to miss her opportunity for that better life. She is afraid when the Sith Banshee woman tries to murder her, understandably so. But then she is fearful when she chooses to strike her down. She thinks she is in a kill or be killed situation. And then she is afraid that she has made a mistake, and so she doubles down. And then she is afraid of missing her chance, and so she goes with the Sith Mother. And then at the very end, she is afraid that she has made the wrong choice. But then at a certain point, her choice, she has locked herself in. She has no more choices because she has, as the classic adage goes, fear is the path to the dark side. And now she has found herself there. And she
oh God. And you've just made this story even more chilling for me. The fact that all her decisions are out of fear, and the fact that look back at the end is just once again her being fearful that she's made a mistake, and that makes me feel that you're right, that there is no escape for her. She's just sort of doomed at that point to whatever fate awaits her. And oh God, it's just, I'll tell you what, and this is what's so great about this entire project of Star Wars Visions is that this, because I've been interested for a while to check out Cartoon Saloon's other works, which I haven't gotten a chance to do yet, but this just makes me really excited to check out their work, because like the storytelling is so good in just this 15 minutes. I know that a number of their films have been very highly acclaimed and nominated for awards and stuff. So
I actually I went back and I revisit, because I had seen a couple of the ones that they had done before. They have what's kind of unofficially referred to as the Irish folklore trilogy, which is 3 films called The Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, and Wolfwalkers, all of which were nominated for the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. And they're all excellent. They're all beautiful animation. In particular, I adore Song of the Sea. I love that movie so much. I cried buckets of tears watching that movie. It is so beautiful. But this was kind of an interesting branch off of that, because while they have all of those movies that I mentioned are kind of based in Irish folklore and have certain like fantastical magical elements to them, this was the first time that they have really delved into what I would truly consider a horror or a ghost story kind of an aspect.
Okay.
And they did it like, again, they grounded it in Irish mythology. Like I've mentioned a couple times, the Sith ghost is based on the Banshee, who, as they've mentioned in the filmmaker focus that goes into the behind the scenes, the scream of the Banshee heralds the death of a family member. And in this case, it's ultimately Dal who is losing her family by a choice that she chooses to make. But it is just so eerie the way that they build on this classic Irish mythology and blend it with the kind of the story of the Sith in a way that feels very seamless and terrifying, as you mentioned. When she screams, that was one of the few times in Star Wars I was actually like, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
I was watching this in 3:00 in the afternoon in broad daylight, and then the hairs on the back of my head stood up. This
is another example of something that I would show to people who are like, cartoons are for kids. Yeah. It's like, watch this and have your kids watch this, and they're having nightmares. But yeah.
Couple of things I wanted to mention. Yeah, the screech was horrifying. The way they visualized the lightsaber in this episode was so cool. The crunchy, falling apart, staticky, almost looking like Kylo Ren's was working perfectly compared to this lightsaber. But I really loved that as a visual choice. And given that Cartoon Saloon is it's an Irish animation studio, and as you say, they reach into their Irish roots for their storytelling. I feel like the story of Dal could be an Irish story, given the way that for a good 100 years that people left their family, and some of them went and did some pretty horrible things. I don't want to bring politics too heavily into this, but those times of troubles they're still way on the Irish cultural zeitgeist. People who believe that they're going to have a better life, or that they're fighting for something better, and in the end they end up being too young and getting their mind warped by people who are manipulating them. It's a really sad story. But yeah, I had that thought when I realized they were Irish. Ireland their more recent history has a lot of young people being duped into doing some horrible things. Yeah. Should we do a mid-roll?
Yes.
Is there something else you want to say about this episode, or should we just go ahead and jump to the mid-roll?
I'll just mention, just to talk about the animation very briefly. There is a specific shot in this episode It's the shot when when Doll is trying to climb out of the cave, and she's reaching up and she's starting to use the force to move the rock, and the Sith woman is behind her with the lightsaber ignited and is grabbing her and is trying to pull her into the abyss. That I just think is one of the most beautiful shots in any Star Wars animated project I've ever seen. It looks like a painting, like some kind of macabre Picasso reimagining that I just found like so striking. Yeah,
I don't remember the shot specifically.
I'm gonna say I don't know if I have it. Maybe I have it, but it was remarkable, I thought.
Yeah.
I do want to say before we go, as dark as this episode is, it does have a couple of really funny moments. I love the two characters. I think they're Quinn and Kina, the little ones, and and then I think I can't tell if I'm matching the right character names to the right character, but I think it's Quinn who's like, I don't want to see a ghost. I saw the ghost.
That was funny.
And also earlier he's like I forget what the exact line, but something to the effect of "Oh, we're going. Where are we going?"
Right.
And yeah, it's just like those little comedic touches like help to sort of relieve some of the pressure, but then like lets your guard down so you're all the more terrified when the scary stuff comes. So yeah. Which but it also adds to the tragedy because this is the family that Doll is, leaving behind. And yeah, and I feel for them, it's like, not knowing what fate, awaits, a member of their family, and and they'll always be, they'll have each other, but it'll always be sort of a shadow over everything for them. Yeah, God. So such a tragic story, but like I said, that's kind of why I love it the most. But it's so dark and tragic, but so beautiful in its execution.
Jared, you got anything else?
Nope, that was it. I just was really, really impressed with this piece of short form storytelling.
My second favorite of the four I've seen so far. Let's do the mid-roll, gentlemen. Okay. This is the mid-roll, the middle. We've still got a good hour to go if y'all want to stick around, but this is the part where I ask you, please remember to hit the thumbs up button, the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't. Share this video around to your Star Wars friends or your other nerdy friends who care about this stuff. I'm going to make sure we shout out our patrons because they're awesome people. One of them is right there, as a matter of fact. And we'll just start with you, the Doctor of Dragons, Jared Kozal. Thank you, sir, for being a patron. But yeah, our Great Worm patrons include this dude right here, Ridiculous Ed Tollett, our Alpha patron and OG. I love that guy. Love you, Sean. Get back to work. Also, Lord John Bronsteen the Wise. Those are our Great Worm patrons. You two guys, thank you so much. They are supported by our Elder Dragon patrons, including the Cloaked One of the Underworld, Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, Kate, Mistress of the House of Books. This is normally where I would say your name, but I already did, so I'm not doing it twice. You don't pay me enough for that. Lady Maura Lee of Starfall, and Lady Rita the Unbound. Thank you, patrons. We love you guys. Jared Kozal, Doctor of Dragons. There, I said it twice. You twisted my arm. We have a Slack group. You want to join our Slack group? All you got to do is send me an email to that email right there. We3Dragons.
That sounds like fun. Let me send off an email. Hold on.
Yeah. at gmail.com. We three dragons, 3 spelled out, at gmail.com. And we'll get you in. And yeah, it's basically kind of like a lot like Discord. And we just keep our nerdy conversations going throughout the week. But that's all you got to do. Shoot me an email and I'll get you in. John, you're streaming again. What are you doing now? What are you doing next week?
I am. So if you missed it last night, which I think a number of people probably did, go check out the stream I did with AR and HA on Kill Bill Volume 1. We had a lot of goofy fun. It was one of those streams where we ventured off topic quite a bit, and there was a lot of sort of chaos, but it's still a really good discussion. And next week, I'll be joined by the wonderful Aaron M., who's in the chat, and we're talking about the 1998 film, The Mask of Zorro. So tune in for that. That'll be Saturday at 7 p.m.
Is that the one with Catherine Zeta-Jones?
It is.
Okay.
Which
Yeah. You don't need to say anything else. She's had the proper instruction. I just know that. I know that that's the case.
Yeah.
But she's had the proper instruction. Yeah.
Also, I want to say, a larger Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, and but also any feminine presenting,
right, to the mothers, to those that love their mothers, to those mothers that are loved. And if you don't fall into the love your mother category because you have a bad mom, I'm very sorry. You deserve better. Take this as a day. Take this as your own day. Treat yourself today.
But anyway, so I preface that, but I just to make sure we're including everybody, but also I want to say a very special Happy Mother's Day to my mom, who this is first Mother's Day without her.
Yeah, I know it is, buddy.
And I love you, Mom. This is a hard one, but that's why I'm glad I'm here with friends, having fun.
Well, we love you, John, and your mom is still proud of you.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't. It's a little bit weird to follow that, but we're just going to move on.
Sorry.
John, it's perfectly legit for you to want to say that. Like, I figured that was going to happen, but like my ability to segue out of that, not great. So I'll just say, come back next week for more of this type of stuff. John, do you want to just lock it in for the rest of Visions next week?
Yeah, we can. I know that was
I think it's probably a good idea. We'll just lock in for Visions, the rest of Star Wars Visions next week, and then the week after that is the one that I've been pushing for, which is the D&D movie.
Which is good. That gives me more time to see it.
Have you seen it, Jared?
I have not. I really want to. My only debate is because it's now available on demand, like streaming. But I actually, if I get a chance, I want to go see it in theaters.
You really should. You really should, because there's enough visual spectacle that you'll appreciate it. A lot of the magical effects in that movie look really good.
It is. I'm going to do it, and then I will look forward to tuning into your stream.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. I'm always so interested to hear from people who don't play D&D, because I played D&D for so long. I don't know if I could miss an Easter egg in that movie.
Yeah, and as I was talking about this with Trish and I believe Micah this morning, I was like, if nothing else, I know Michelle Rodriguez is in the movie, so
and she kills it. Chris Pine is in it too, and he's quite good. Everybody does a good enough job. Hugh Grant, but there's a young actress that plays Chris Pine's daughter, and I'm like, keep your eye on that one, because she going places. she's got a lot of like emotional weight to carry. You know what? We'll talk about this in 2 weeks. But yeah, next week some more Star Wars Visions, right? Right.
Yes. And I don't know if you'll be available next week or not, Jared, but obviously, you're welcome to come back on.
Yeah, though that actually works out perfectly because I will be available next weekend. I think the weekend after it, I do have a prior commitment, so I wouldn't be able to make that one. But I'm still going to try to tune in for the stream. So
cool. Yeah, that works out perfectly then. I'm glad we changed it up then, because originally I think we had in mind to do Dungeons and Dragons next week, and then
then we
wrap up Visions.
Had Nessie next week.
Yeah,
Nessie is not here this week, not because she's working as usual, but because she's mothering on Mother's Day. She's out there getting treated right by her kids. So we love you, Nessie. You're the stream mom. You're the Here Be Dragons mom. And if you're not going to be here, I'm really glad you're out being spoilt by your kids. Spoilt. Not spoiled. She's a Southerner. She's getting spoilt, Yeah. Anything else we need to squeeze into the... Oh, yeah. One more thing. Folks, I need y'all to start weighing in on ideas because I think within a couple of weeks, we're going to have a weekend picked and we're going to start looking for actual names of people who are going to come on vacation with us, probably to Florida next year, to the beach in Florida. St. Augustine, Florida is where we're looking at right now. Late April. So start thinking about, making that happen. More information to come very soon for Here Beach Con. Where is my brain now? I think that's the end. Okay. Let's just go back to Star Wars, okay? Episode 3. In the Stars by Punk Robot. And you said they're from Chile, is that right?
Yes.
Probably of the 4 that I watched, probably my least favorite of the 4. And I think a lot of that has to do with the frame rate of the animation. It just almost hurts my eyes.
I will say that, I want to. There's a thin line here because I want to say that I actually think the animation is very beautiful, but I will say I'm kind of in agreement. The frame rate, I'm sort of used to it now, so I accept it as the style. But on my first viewing, it was a bit distracting. I think in part because I noticed that the overall camera movement is actually really smooth. It's but the character animation is stylistically, it's they've made a choice with the frame rate to kind of, it's not as smooth as some other stuff, but I have no doubt that it looks exactly the way they want it to look. So the actual animation, probably not my favorite of the films, but the story is really good, and I want to do a shout out also to the music for this episode because it has probably some of my favorite music of the season. And also I love the fact that it's a small thing, but the Imperial officer is voiced by Kate Dickey, which I got a kick out of. And this, the thing that's really good about especially the second half of these episodes is and in Screecher's Reach you do have the character of the quote unquote Sith mother, but these two really have a lot of themes of of mothers and motherhood, and which felt particularly fitting for talking about on Mother's Day. So. Mm-hmm. So that's great. But it's weird about the animation, as I say, the frame rate is the key. It is what was distracting for me, because the actual animation, the overall style, I think is really cool. I love the fact that everything feels like, you know, it feels like stop motion and like miniatures. Like, you know, you can really, the way you look at it, everything kind of, and I mean this in a good way, feels small, like you're watching something being played out on, like, you know, and models and miniatures and stuff. But the fact is, so much of it is actually CG animation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's designed to look that way, but it's I think like the reference stuff, that they made models and stuff for reference for the animation, but it's really rather creative the way it's done. So my only preference with that would have been, I would have liked it if the character animation was a little bit smoother, but perhaps the animation studio themselves wouldn't have wanted that. Then this is exactly what they intend. So so at the end of the day, I'm fine with it, and I've kind of gotten accustomed to it now that I've watched it a couple times. But I think the story is really good. You know, the overall style is nice, and probably my least favorite of the four, but that shouldn't indicate that I don't think it's great, because I do.
Yeah, no. I'm going to keep shouting out those filmmaker focus, you know, behind the scenes extras on Disney Plus. They talk about the animation process for this one. Essentially, they made stop motion kind of like characters and puppets and sets, but then it was all scanned into a computer, and then it was kind of computer animated from there. And so it looks a little bit different than like I Am Your Mother, which is pure stop motion animation. And I feel like the kind of the hybrid maybe doesn't work quite the way, quite as well as but maybe I'm just not used to it. I will say that my single favorite part of the short what I thought was absolutely beautiful is the 2D animation within the 3D animation, when they're telling when the younger sister Tachina is kind of telling the story about her mother and how she rose up to fight against the Imperials and ultimately lost her life. I thought that sequence using the painting on the rock was just gorgeous. And as you mentioned, John, the music, I feel like the music in this one is really effectively used. There's a particular refrain that comes back again and again throughout the movie, and by the end, it, you know, is real. It's kind of gone from this kind of mournful tune to a very hopeful and uplifting, you know, piece of music, but it's in the same, you know, the same style. It's just now we have new context for it, and
yeah,
I found it, you know, very effective in that way. I do think that the overall individual story of this one is probably the most basic and most familiar of the shorts that we've seen, because it is about you know, the Empire essentially ravaging and poisoning a planet. We've seen this before. I did think that I really appreciated the unique cultural touches that were brought to this one. They talk about in the filmmaker focus that they were kind of inspired by the Patagonian natives in the southern part of Chile, who were, you know, essentially subjected to persecution and ultimately genocide by the invading, you know, colonizers. And you can see that, like, the main characters in this story, Khotan and Tachina, are inspired by indigenous, you know, First Nations kind of peoples, and I really thought that was very effective. I personally think that it's, you know, it was a well, you know, crafted example of the kind of story that the filmmakers were clearly very passionate about and wanted to tell. And I feel like if like you and Steven, this was probably my least favorite of the four, but I don't say that pejoratively. It's just the one that I probably didn't connect to as much, but I still think the message was great. I thought the animation was, you know, well crafted, even if I maybe wasn't quite on its wavelength. And I do think this was ultimately a very interesting and well, you know, well worthwhile story. And I got emotional at the end of it when they had that moment where they're, reminiscing, and they can see their mother up in the stars, and then those two stars representing them appear like in the sky next to her. I thought that was a beautiful note to end it on. And it was it was an emotionally affecting sequence overall. I honestly feel like this is one I've seen it twice. I probably want to give it a third watch just to see if anything else hits me on the third try. But I do think that this probably lands in the middle of the pack of Visions overall for me. It just happens that out of these these four that we're having to talk about, I thought that the first, Sith was incredibly visually compelling. I thought the story of Screecher's Reach was incredibly haunting and dynamic. And then we're going to talk about I Am Your Mother. I just thought that one had charm for days. So this just kind of ends up, fourth by happenstance, but it's still a good piece of filmmaking overall.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't have anything like negative at all to say, but I think it's extremely well executed. Like I said, I think the story is very good. It's just one of those things where something has to land in last place, and well, it doesn't have to. We could say screw ranking, which I often do, but like it's probably the one that just didn't connect to me, as much as the others, which doesn't mean that it's not very good. I did love the character of Tachina, just her whole personality with I love every time she's like, I can beat them, it's just and that shot when in the opening of the episode where she's trying to like take down the TIE fighter with the Force, it's just like and that's some of the animation that I really did actually love. I just love seeing familiar things through the lens of something like even though it's not total stop motion, but it's like stop motion inspired CG animation, and it just looks really cool. So there's lots to love about this film. Just and like I said, it probably like the score is probably one of my favorites of the season. So
yeah, I feel like, and this would be a bug, not a feature, but I feel like one of the reasons that perhaps I was not like as just enraptured from it from the beginning was I was actually kind of finding myself sympathizing with the older sister character of Khoten, who is not the one you're supposed to be sympathizing with, because, she's very jaded and cautious. She was old enough to remember her mother dying. And in this horrific way, and whereas Tachina kind of has more this heroic, idealistic memory of her mother, and you see this, and throughout the entire thing, Tachina's trying to face down the TIE fighter, and as you say, John, she keeps like, "We can beat them, we can beat them," and they're like. It's a very, little kid kind of energy. And I kind of felt like I was sympathizing with Khoten. I was like, no, you can't beat them. They've got stormtroopers. They've got ATSTs. What are you doing? Then she goes over and tries to get the water. And then look over and see that Tachina has followed her, and she's immediately gotten yourself captured. And you're just like, oh God, now you've got to save her. But the thing is, Tachina is ultimately morally right. It's just that Khoten ultimately needs her inspiration and they are stronger together ultimately. But it really takes that moment where the darkest before the dawn, when Kate Dickey's Imperial officer captures Tachina again and is basically throw her over the side to her death. And having just come off Screecher's Reach, I'm like, oh God, they're gonna kill this little girl, and then Khoten is gonna, go nuts on him. But then we have the kind of classic moment where she does go over the edge, and that's when Khoten taps into her latent Force abilities and saves her sister, and then they're able to stand together and ultimately defeat the Empire together. And from then on, I thought it was really great. But I feel like I was kind of intentionally annoyed by Tachina at certain points. But that was a bug, not a feature. That was a feature, not a bug. I'm sorry.
Right. Again, I kind of agree with everything you guys said. I think they got out exactly what they wanted. I think, again, you were talking about the frame rate a minute ago, John. It is exactly what they wanted. I think they achieved the vision that they set out to. That it did not appeal to me as much as some of the other episodes is not. Again, like I put episode 1 A+, episode 2 A+, episode 4 A-, episode 3 B+.
Yeah,
it's a good grade. It's a good grade.
We kind of like talked about this, at least I think we did, in the last season discussion. It's like just the very nature of Star Wars Visions also is that different shorts are going to appeal to different people. I'm positive that there are people who watch these for whom this is their favorite one. And so that's kind of what I love about it is like there's no right answer as to like which was the best one. It's like Screecher's Reach appeals to me because I'm in this place in my life where I love like dark, twisted storytelling that's tragic, and because it taps into, you know, a certain part of the human experience. At a different point in my life, you know, it would not be my favorite. It'd be like, that was a weird one. You know, I can definitely see, like, I think even last year, if you had showed me this group, my favorite probably would have, you know, we're not there yet, but I probably would have said that my favorite was Journey to the Darkhead because that gets very epic in its scope. And, you know, we'll talk about that next week. But so like, it's just, yeah, everything can hit different people in different ways. And so yeah, the fact that this was not my favorite of the four is fine because I still think it's really good.
Yeah, it is still good. And again, the frame rate thing bothered me, and I did not get over it. It's their artistic choice, and I could tell it was their artistic choice very early on because certain things were animated at a different frame rate in the same scene, where you had the characters animated in that very like on 2s or maybe even on 3s. There's a very choppy style, but then you see like the spores released from these mushrooms, and they're very smooth, fluid animation, like animated on 1s.
Yeah, I will say, like, the thing that's kind of bothered me was the inconsistency. Mm-hmm. You know, the fact that some things were very smooth and then other things were more choppy. So that's sort of where my distraction with it came in. I hesitate to sort of use negative terms because it's just not, I think I'm with you, Steven. It's just not my preference. Mm-hmm. But I have no doubt that they, you know, got exactly what they wanted. And, you know, and for other people that probably, you know, stylistically, they're completely on board with it. For me, it just, you know.
Yeah. And I will say this too, like, bravo to them to adding to what Star Wars is and can be.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with what they added to the overall experience. As I say, if I've given it a B+, that's a good grade.
Yeah. And I do want to say again, like, I'm going to bring up Kate Dickey again, because like, I can say a lot of super positive things about Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I can have fights with people, you know, about, well, no, like, you're not getting that this is what they were actually going for with this, you know. But one of the things that really sticks in my craw with The Last Jedi is that Kate Dickey has like a 2-second cameo where she just is sitting down, turns the camera, says a line, and that's all we get from her. It's like, you've got Kate Dickey. Use her for something.
Look,
So
you can't write a huge cameo part for every actor that walks in. A lot of actors are just happy to be on the set, you know. Like Daniel Craig is in a stormtrooper uniform.
Yeah.
And we never see his face. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, because John, we love Kate Dickey around here because she is actually a part of the A Song of Ice and Fire fan community in a way that most of the rest of the actors from that show are not. Her and like Miltos Yolomaru are the two big ones that I think of.
I just want to say, like, for those who have not yet experienced the wonderfulness of Kate Dickey, like at Con of Thrones, like she took like at least like a good 15 minutes with like each person coming to get her autograph. And like I stood there and her and I just like talked about you know the character of Lysa. Then we talked about her time working on the film Prometheus and how Ridley Scott scared the crap out of her on that set. And like she is such a wonderful glowing person. And so anytime I see her in a project, I'm like, it's Kate Dickey.
I mean, can't stand Lysa Arryn, but Kate Dickey really did. Like, met her a couple of times at the con, and she's a gem. Like, she's made real life friends with people she met at Con of Thrones, and like stayed at their house, had them stay at her house. I'm not one of them, but I'm, friend of a friend knows Kate Dickey super well.
Yeah, I will say, like, it didn't work, but I even threw out an attempt at getting her for my Green Knight stream. Didn't quite work. She's obviously a very busy person, doesn't know who I am. She knows people that I know.
You need to talk to her agent and pay her appearance fee, then you can talk.
But the fact that she's close enough to certain areas of the fandom that I felt like, let me give that a shot. It was still worth trying, I will say. But no, she's utterly fantastic, and so I was delighted to see her get a role in this, and of course playing the evil Imperial officer.
I one of my little like hobby thing was I've compiled like a list of all the actors I can keep track of who have appeared in both Star Wars and the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon worlds, and it's a lot because I think in particular I think the sequel trilogy and the latter seasons of Game of Thrones shared some of the same casting departments. So there are a lot of different You look, you can see Dagmir Cleftjaw pop up in The Last Jedi. You can see Pitt pop up in The Rise of Skywalker. Miltos Yaralimou has a very brief cameo in The Force Awakens. There are like, it's always fun to see them, pop up. They don't always. Not everyone gets a role as prominent as Emilia Clarke in Solo, but not everyone can be Emilia Clarke. So
right. Well, Emilia Clarke was cast as that role.
Yeah.
Kate Dickey didn't like try out to be cast as Imperial Communications Officer number 2.
No.
She showed up and was like, "Please let me in here. I'll play Communications Officer number 2." And that's how any of us would be too. I don't need to be Han Solo. Let me, I'll be the silver C-3PO that just says Ichuta, and C-3PO says, "How rude." Like, give me that role, I'll take it. And I'll be like, that's me. That's my voice saying Ichuta, being rude to that gold neurotic mess. Anyway, we've gotten enough off the track. Let's steer it back towards Visions. And shall we just move on to the final episode now? I don't know much else to say about this episode.
That's fine, because
I know I was out. I had to rush to the restroom, y'all. Having a little gastrointestinal distress. I'll leave it at that. But I did like the episode in the stars overall. I really liked the end. The idea about the sisters bonding and the idea of like what we get from our parents even after they're gone still continues to affect us. I thought it was a beautiful story. I just didn't like the visual styling. But let's move on to Wallace and Gromit in space.
Oh my god, I loved I Am Your Mother. This for me, like, this was one of my favorites of the whole season. Like, it's just it's just wonderful, fun, and so much heart. And I love that it's got Wedge and the original actor.
It's got Dennis Lawson as Wedge, like hyping up his merch line. That was hilarious.
I love the fact that, in the original Star Wars movies, Wedge is kind of like the everyman, the one who survives all three of the major battles. But, he's always, there, the stalwart lieutenant. He'll do what you need him to do. He'll he'll take the shot if you need him to take the shot, but he's not going for the glory. And here, Dennis Lawson gets to play him a little bit dialed up. And was like, yeah, you know what? I am Wedge Antilles, and I am pretty damn great if I do so.
Oh god, I just what I love is that, and this is like going back, this is the power of Visions, and the fact that it gets to, it doesn't have to adhere to, not just the canon, but like the standard, like, Star Wars style, if you can say that Star Wars has a standard style, which it doesn't. Obviously, it's allowed to be sort of wide range, and we get stuff from like Andor to Clone Wars or the Mandalorian stuff, but this got to be, the Wallace and Gromit, version of Star Wars, and it was just absolutely glorious.
It was delightful. That's the word I'm going to use for this one. Again, I give it an A- earlier, but it was delightful. It missed some of the emotional stakes that I like that you get from a lot of Star Wars, and honestly, it was very predictable. There was nothing that surprised me, but it was so cute and so well done. I loved it.
Yeah, like I'm totally fine with something like this being utterly predictable, because it's just like, it starts off and I know what I'm in for. And I'm very happy with that. And like the whole, the fact that it's, about, a daughter and her, the fact that she has an embarrassing mother, which, all our mothers.
Every mother is embarrassing when you're a teenager.
Yeah. And just the fact that they're Twilighters, but they're British.
Yeah.
It's just so great. Yeah. And then, like, I'm just gonna start rattling off like moments. Like, just I love the moment with the little Wookiee ripping off.
Oh yes, that was in the trailer, and I was just like, that's so cute. And then it was just as effective in the in the short itself. Also, the moment that was also in the trailer where the snooty villainous girl is being a total like stuck up to our main character Ani, and then her little short friend is like, she's a total, and then the Wookiee's like, ruh, and he's like, exactly. I apologies for the terrible accent, but that was like, it was just charming. It was so cute and so like heartfelt, and that this is what I think people expected when they heard that Aardman was going to do a Star Wars, Visions installment, in the Wallace and Gromit kind of chicken run kind of style. And, they just had so much fun with it. Like from the opening moments where, Wedge Antilles is, giving his big spiel about the race day. And then all of a sudden it cuts out and you scroll down to you see the Jawa has like pulled the little, plug out of his billboard and is like, Utini, and then he runs away. And I'm just like, this is very, basic par for the course, but I'm having a good time with it. And it did have a real heart to it. I really loved the mother character and her relationship with
Oh, and by the way, I love the fact that like when the mother comes onto the racetrack and the first thing you see floating down is a bra, which, by the way, has to be a pointed reference to George Lucas. And just the whole there's no underwear in space.
Carrie Fisher would be pleased. Oh man.
Oh god. Yeah.
But it was littered with all those kind of like, references, but they were all like so integrated well into the story. I love the fact that the Van Riepel's little ship, like their little gun on the ship is literally
the Death Star.
It was just so. and of course we talked earlier about E2, like the droid being like very dog like. Here we have a droid who is literally a dog.
Yeah, R2 dog too.
But no, first of all, I love that the villainous characters are named the Van Riepels. It's just such a pointed, sort of villainous name. And the fact that I'm left wondering, like, did these people get through the the program that we see instituted in
the amnesty program? Yeah,
the amnesty program, because there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on there. They look very very imperial, and they've got a freaking little mini Death Star on their racer that's firing lasers. Like,
very good, very funny.
Oh god, yeah. And I just love, like, it just moments like you want to tell her to shut up, but it is very funny when she's like, would you get your porta potty off the starting line? Oh my god, it's gold. It's one of those things where, like, I get it that this is like, it's exactly what you would expect it to be, and maybe it doesn't have like the emotional core of the other episodes, because it's like, there's a lot of comedy here, but it is very heartfelt. And I have to say, I'd venture to say, like, even though Screechers Reach is my favorite, I'm going to go ahead and say that this might be one of the ones that I end up revisiting the most, just because it's so fun.
Because of how fun and silly it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had the. I'm always a sucker for a race in Star Wars. This one would definitely.
Oh yeah, it felt very episode
Phantom
1
Menace. Yeah.
pod race. Yeah. It's so great. Trying to think of some other stuff. Yeah, and I'm talking about the actual story itself and not just the comedy, but I did just really love the mother-daughter story, and just the stuff with seeing, like, when she was younger, and and just them driving the ship together, and all that stuff. And it's all very, like, this is standard stuff, like you said. It's just it's not going to get huge points for originality of story, but it's yeah, exactly. But I did find that emotional, and and maybe it's just because sort of where I'm at personally, just the fact that it was a mother story that just I found that very affecting. And I love that the daughter is like, so we're just going to get off the track, right? And the mother is obviously offended. She's like, oh no, I'm going to show that.
Yeah, I appreciated that the way that they took the mother-daughter relationship. They had the daughter was clearly embarrassed by her mother, but her mother didn't like resent her for it, or she just kind of took it in stride, and she was hurt by it, but she never like abandoned her daughter. She was there for her all the way through. and you can tell that they really do have that loving connection. Like this is not this was not a case of Ani, the main character, thinking that her mother like was truly less than. It was more of it just that kind of awkwardness that comes with the teenage years, and she wants to be her own person, but she feels like she can't. They are coded as very working class as opposed to the upscale kind of the Van Riepels, and Ani is part of this flight academy and she is clearly like it's kind of a first person from her family to go to college kind of story, and she has that quest for a better life, but I feel like she kind of doubts herself in the sense of, but I can't actually be the hero. I can't be Wedge Antilles. I can't be Harrison Dula, who she has a poster of on her wall. But she has the skills, and her mother just needs to bring that confidence out of her. And I feel like they find themselves in that situation where it's able to come out, and they work together, and the Ryloth role that they pull off, tying back to the maneuver that they used to practice as when she was much younger. That was just very sweet and effective callback. Like it was a very efficient storytelling. This is, I think, probably the shortest of all of them, but it told its story and did so very effectively.
Yeah, and this and this is the animation is obviously pure stop motion animation, which I just absolutely loved it. And in contrast, for example, to the last episode where I had issues with the frame rate and stuff, this was just gorgeously done, and I love that we got so many varieties of animation styles this season. Just we got CG animation, we got hand drawn, we got stop motion. It's just
the best part of this episode to me was, I don't know the name of the Wookiee, but like when the other kid is laughing at the Wookiee kid, and he like, because he's playing and he tears the arms off the doll. I'm like, yep. That's some like somebody who loves their Star Wars knows to put that joke in, and like you say, the bra falling out because there's no underwear in space. Like somebody, whoever was like writing this, which is a person named Gabriel Osario.
Didn't he write the third one?
Oh, you're right. Magdalena Osinska was the director. Story by the same lady, Magdalena Osinska. Teleplay by Holly Walsh and Barunka O'Shaughnessy, who I don't know who those people are, but they know their Star Wars. I'll give them that. They knew the jokes and where to put them.
Yeah, and in the filmmaker focus for this particular one, the Magdalena Osinska, she talks about the fact, she's British. This is a British story, but her mother grew up, I guess, working class in Poland. So part of this, the inspiration for this story is kind of she, like when her immigrant mother kind of came to, her school functions, she always felt, a little bit out of place because her mother didn't talk like everybody else. And she, but she ultimately realized just how valuable her perspective and the love that she showed her was. And that the director goes on to talk about how, one day when my son is old enough, he'll be embarrassed by me. And that's going to be, great because that's the natural cycle of things.
As somebody who has been embarrassed by their parents and the embarrassing parent, I get it.
And this will be another way I want to celebrate my mom. It's like she was to me the best person in all the world, and I love her still, and but oh man, she could be embarrassing. Just like things she would say in front of other people, you know, like about me and stuff. It was just like, Mom, please. So yeah, it's so identifiable for everybody.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, you're like, I would not have it any other way. Like, you know.
Yeah, I used to make my mom drop me off a block from school, so I could walk up and not be seen in the same car with her. You know, and I think about that now, and I'm like, God, what a shitty thing to do to your parents. But then my kids turned around and did it to me, and so I'm like, all right, maybe I don't feel so bad, because I think we all do it, you know. And the story is what it is. Again, it didn't surprise me in any way. Knew she was going to be embarrassed of her mom. Knew her mom was going to wind up racing anyway, and that they'd win. But you know, that's a journey every human being goes through. So I think it's always one that you can retell in whatever setting that you want. And I really enjoy that this studio chose to do this very kind of like just chose to do this type of story in the Star Wars setting, because it was a lot of fun to see. And again, they were obviously fans, and they snuck a lot of great little references in there. Like you say, the Harrison Dula poster, Wedge on the thing, the Jawas and the UTD. Like, it was a whole bunch of just member berries, you know. Hey, you remember this? You remember that? And I loved it for that reason. It's not gonna. It's again. That's why it's an A-, not an A+. It did not scale new heights for me, but it did. But it did very well.
Yeah, like, and you know, I feel like, you know, going into this, Aardman Studios knows exactly what its fans want to see from a Star Wars, you know, you know, from their version of Star Wars. So it's like, you know, we don't want to stray too far off the off the path, because we do want people to be happy with it. But Kate, get on it. It's, you don't even have to see anything else to watch this.
Yeah, it's literally, you can just watch whatever. But you can watch it out of order. It's not even like a contiguous season like that.
Yeah.
But hi Laura, hi Kate, because Laura also says hi. Hi guys.
I really want to mention Wedge again too, because I love his voiceover over the credits. It just like, you know, buy my merchandise and support the Rebel Pilot Fund.
Yeah, I just love that Wedge ended up an Instagram influencer at the end of, you know, after the Death Star run.
Yeah. And I'm just also just so happy to see Dennis Lawson back and like involved in the Star Wars community again. There was a period where, kind of like Harrison Ford, he had stepped away.
A period.
But he has been back. You know, he's been back on the convention circuit. He appeared in The Rise of Skywalker, and now he's doing this, which I just think is, you know, such like a charming use of his talents.
40 years there where he wanted nothing to do with Star Wars. I think he just finally got to that spot where he realized that, oh, this character that I played really did touch and speak to a whole lot of people. Because, yeah, Wedge is the guy that made it all the way to the end, worked hard, did his thing. Other people were, you know, getting all the glories. They were getting the medals. They were having the lightsabers and blah, blah, blah. But Wedge was the guy that just, he showed up. He did his job. He kept trying. And he eventually, you know, rose through the ranks. Because, you know, I don't remember what his number is in the first Red 8 or 9 or something, but
he's I think he's Red 2.
Maybe, but he's definitely Red Leader at the end.
By the end, yeah.
And I brought this up last season when we talked about the film Tatooine Rhapsody, and the fact that for the English dub they brought in Tamora Morrison to voice Boba Fett, and you know, I feel the same way about this with bringing in Dennis Lawson. It's so great that for something that is, you know, not canon to the main Star Wars, that they're nonetheless bringing, you know, the actors in who have portrayed these characters, you know, in the films, because it adds this air of, okay, it's not canon, but it's still, it's still Star Wars, and it's like we're not treating it as lesser than, which is
the
great.
risk of relighting a fire that has burned brightly in a conversation between us in the past, John. About canon. We've had a whole stream about why canon matters and why it doesn't. And I actually think this show is the perfect illustration of both points. Canon matters because, like, we know that whatever stories they make are not going to affect any stories going forward unless they're continuations of these specific stories. Great, all fine and good. And canon also matters because they're drawing on the Star Wars canon to make the show. Every studio is taking the elements that they want and making a story out of it. But also canon doesn't matter because this show is good whether it's canon or not. You can enjoy the show. Again, I don't want to relight that bonfire of conversation because we've gone back and forth over this.
I'm holding myself back.
Right. But like, I think it's a perfect illustration of both why it can matter but why it really doesn't matter in the end. The good story is the good story. I think it does matter in that, just that without a canon of Star Wars, what are you drawing from? And understanding that you can then bend the rules because it's outside of canon lets you do things that you couldn't do if it was going to be a canon story. Yeah. But in the end,
I'll just launch off if
if you disagree with me,
if I say anything. Well, no, it's just because
it's already too late for that. I already disagree with you.
Yeah, no, but the great thing is that as we discussed with the first film, Sith, is that that also draws from was it Knights of the Old Republic? You guys were talking about, which is decidedly not canon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tend to view it as this is drawing from the legacy of Star Wars, and then adding to that legacy, so that's why I'm always like, just Star Wars stories are Star Wars stories. Don't get too bent out of shape over.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like Legends has a very specific designation within the Star Wars family because it refers to the old EU timeline that was decanonized. But in a lot of ways, these stories all feel like legends. In the more classical sense, like Sith and Screecher's Reach in particular do feel like they could have been stories that happened somewhere in the distant mists of the Star Wars past. And do we know that they're true or not? But did something like this possibly happen? I think it probably did. This one, How I Am Your Mother, is probably the most like overtly not, canon adjacent, in the sense that I don't think Wedge has his own line of commercialized product anywhere in the Star Wars timeline. But do I love that they do it here? Because damn right, Wedge Antilles deserves his his line of customizable coffee mugs.
Oh God, it's so great. Yeah, and like at the end of the day, like I love this, and would I love to see Aardman be like given the license to say maybe do a full length movie?
Yeah, sure.
Since Star Wars, I think that would be awesome. And that goes to a larger like conversation of what I brought up earlier about I do want to see sort of extensions of some of the stuff. I know that like the current appeal is the fact that they're very like bite-sized samplings of what this can be, but I would love like extended like experiments with give these studios the ability to maybe expand on some of this stuff, because like I said, with season 1, I very much want to see like an expansion of the Ninth Jedi. I think that would be cool. And for this season, there's many of these shorts that I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more of the worlds that have been established, whatever form that might take. So it'd be interesting to see if they sort of expand what Star Wars Visions is at some point in the future. I think for now
I disagree. I actually disagree. The fact is, they give them these very succinct little chunks of time to do whatever they want. Making a whole movie is a whole different undertaking.
Oh, it is.
And as much as I enjoy the stories and think, oh, I wonder what happens next, I think that you might even be doing a disservice to some of the stories by continuing them, because then you're removing the audience's interpretation of whatever the end of that is. I especially think of like the end of Screecher's Reach. I as much as I would love to know what happens to Doll, I don't want them to show me what happens to Doll.
That's fair. But I do think there are certain of these shorts that like hint at a larger world that I do think the one that I always mention again, the Ninth Jedi, I think that sets up a very big epic story which I think could be expanded upon. And so I'm not saying that I want every short to be expanded upon, but I do think there are ones where it feels like there could be more story told, and I don't think it would take away from from the creation of the individual shorts.
We'll also say these stories feel like stories that maybe are told inside the Star Wars universe. These legends or these visions type stories feels like the type of things that Han Solo might have told Ben at bedtime. You know what I mean? Or Leia might have told Ben at bedtime. Any of these, like the Screecher's Reach one, sounds like a ghost story set in the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and so I would say that in the instance of Screecher's Reach, I don't think I necessarily like to see an expansion of that story, because I think it is like that's a cautionary tale. But I would love to see Cartoon Saloon be allowed to like do a quote unquote like Star Wars Visions film that could be a different story. I just would. Oh, you're muted, Steph.
I might like to see the story they actually made into a full-length story, like a full-length feature film. I think you could take Screecher's Reach and make it a whole film. Just you can dig into their time at the sweatshop, and then the relationship between the kids, and you can really like layer in a lot more of pain at the end because of the bond that you could grow between the characters for 90 minutes before yanking Doll away at the end. I think it could hit even harder.
I think this conversation we're having about like what stories would you not want to see continued, and which ones would you? I think also it has a lot to do also with the fact that like this season was sort of a different beast from season 1, and the fact that with the Japanese anime, like it's sort of that style of storytelling, with the shorts, that a lot of them were left very open-ended where the stories weren't resolved. You definitely, I think it's a very sad ending, but the story of Screecher's Reach is resolved. And it reaches a conclusion.
And I will say, like from season 1 of Visions, those open-ended, that's just a very Eastern norm for storytelling. It's just very normal for them not to wrap everything up with a bow. Is there anything else you guys want to say about these first 4 episodes that can't wait till next week? Because I really need to pee.
Just that I loved them, and I'm so glad you enjoyed them too, Steph. Because I enjoyed them each for different reasons, and just an absolute blast. And in the interest of letting you go pee, I'll I'll cut it off at that.
Okay, thank you. So come back next week for 5 more episodes of the same show.
But Jared, do you have any final
Yeah, no,
Well, who cares? Who cares?
I'll just say very briefly to go the what you guys were saying. I feel like these shorts work as best as like kind of a proof of concept and a building ground for the studios themselves, because this really gives Lucasfilm an opportunity to connect with creative people from all over the world, and say that we did this project with you. It worked out really well. What else do you have? And that, going forward, perhaps one of these filmmakers might wind up, getting the opportunity to tell a longer form story one day, either on the big screen or on Disney Plus. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they dream up.
Even if they're not Star Wars, some of these studios, it's just a good opportunity for them to get their work out there, for people to be like, oh, I really liked that. And they'll go look up what studio did it. And then they'll find stories about Irish, animated shows about Irish mythology that they never knew about. And it's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely watch the Cartoon Saloon Irish folklore trilogy. Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, and Wolfwalkers if you have not. They are all excellent and well worth your time.
Nice. Y'all, let's cut it off there. Come back next week for 5 more episodes of Star Wars Visions. John, what are you streaming on next week? Next Saturday evening?
Yep, next Saturday at 7, Aaron will be joining me for talking about The Mask of Zorro, so come watch that.
7 Eastern time.
Yeah.
7 p.m. Eastern. Mask of Zorro. That's the one with Catherine Zeta-Jones being all hot and stuff.
Yeah.
And Antonio Banderas also being all hot and stuff.
Yeah, there's plenty of thirst to go around.
There is. Plenty of thirst to go around. All right. Jared, thank you so much. As always, a genuine pleasure to have you.
My pleasure, Stephen.
Yeah. You're welcome back anytime. How about next week?
Sounds good to me.
Fantastic. We'll see you then. But until then, you know what it is. Peace and be excellent to each other. Bye, everyone.
Bye.